I think my very first appraisal in my very first job, my manager said to me, "You better tone down your aspirations, otherwise you get very frustrated." I'm Boden, I'm the CEO and founder of Starling Bank. Starling Bank is all about doing banking in a very different way, really bringing to banking for the first time all the things that happened in other industries. It's a bit of a mission. It's about doing something that's never been done before.
But I wanted to find out, firstly, a bit more about you. I personally, I've had very strong women in my background, so my grandmother, my mother. But how about you? Have you had very strong mum and grandmother? And is your family a big sort of driver in your business acumen?
I think my grandmother was, an independent woman at 18
Wow.
that always had various business interests. And my mother was the same. And I was brought up with my grandmother and my mother, where my mother was going to work and then my grandmother was looking after me and really encouraging me that it was normal to have a career. Sort of going back to my childhood, I was used to my mother and my grandmother making all the financial decisions, being the people that understood the neighbourhood, understood financial tools. I think my grandmother's hobby was writing letters to the taxman on behalf of the local neighbours. Numbers, finance, and the women doing it have always been part of my background.
That's very interesting. Writing letters on behalf of the neighbours. This is incredible. This is incredible. It does take a certain type of person, but it's phenomenal. How did you get into banking? What was the initial stimulus?
After university, I did a degree in chemistry and computer science. I was going to apply for lots of jobs and did in defence industry, in quite complex combinations of computing and analytics. And my mum said to me, "Can you just apply for one job in a bank? You know, that's a normal sort of job that people do. Can you apply for a job in a bank?" And I did. And I came up to London for my interview with Lloyds Bank. First time in London on my own. It was, went through quite a rigorous interview process where I think 1,000+ people had applied and got one of the first positions at Lloyds Bank as part of the computer systems department.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. You've also, I did a little sort of asking around and you started also as a teller and not a lot of CEOs started that way. Do you think it gives you a better perspective on the business from an end-to-end point of view?
Yeah, I think sitting on a counter, talking to customers and really sort of interacting with real customers with real money issues is very grounding. I was very fortunate that I went out to a branch and I spent time in the branch and did all the jobs in the branch. And everything from filling up the ATM with the cash to sorting the checks to making sure that the till balanced overnight. It's a great experience. And it was part of me coming to London, understanding a new world, getting into real day-to-day financial affairs.
Interesting. I've always wanted to find out sort of what gives you the motivation to kind of keep going every day. I think I'm constantly switched on and I sometimes feel a little anxious sometimes, but I control it. What gives you the motivation to keep going?
I think it's always exciting. Looking back in my career, I tend to have new jobs every 5 years, either a new country, a new industry, a new function. My career has not necessarily been sort of hierarchical progression, but lots of different things over the time. And each new job gives me something to learn about. I'm very curious. I read a lot. I love new things. I love finding out about things. And with Starling, you can tick a box and say you've done something, but you wake up the following morning and there's a whole new range of things going on out there. Technology is very exciting. This industry is going through a huge change. Now, this sounds really strange, but I go away with most weekends. I come back Monday morning or Sunday evening into the city, and as I'm driving into London, I still get that excitement, that sort of enthusiasm of what I'm going to work on. And I've been doing that a long time. Okay. And I still get that feeling of, it's all going to happen this week.
Wow. So this is incredible what you just said, because a lot of people give up on their dreams, give up on having fun and truly being curious. It's not about, yes, money is good, raising a lot of money is great, and you're very good at it. But I think it's about being curious on a day-to-day basis and being hopeful. I think a lot of people lose hope as they get into the grind of the system. But it's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That was very good. What has been your biggest challenge in life, and how did you overcome it, whether it was personal or professional, if you're okay to dig into that?
I think my very first appraisal in my very first job, my manager said to me, you better tone down your aspirations, otherwise you get very frustrated.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went around the building and told absolutely everybody that he'd said that to me, and I was going to prove him wrong.
Wow.
And, this was in the early 80s. And I was a new graduate, 21, telling the world I was going to change things. Perhaps I was a bit arrogant and perhaps a bit too ambitious. But I am very ambitious. And I'm very, very keen and very, very enthusiastic about changing things. And that doesn't always go down very well.
Very interesting. I always find leadership can be sometimes quite a lonely place. Do you find that?
I think that, no, not really. I think I share a lot. I think I really enjoy the social element of the job. I've always believed that you should only do something if you're having fun. Life's very, very short. You have to cram exciting things into it. You shouldn't have days that are miserable. You should surround yourself by people who give you energy. I love the office.
Yeah, no,
I love what I do. I love, even today, I'm hugely privileged to work with great people, have great conversations, get to know things that I've never done before. I'm hugely privileged, and I think I value the fact that the majority of people don't have the advantages I have and don't have the opportunities. And I'd really like to share the message that, you have to grasp all the opportunities you can and take risks.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting about taking risks because I was going to ask you, what kind of entrepreneur would you like to be known as? Would you like to be known as a super ambitious risk taker, 1 in 10 punts work, or would you like to sort of be known as somebody who has a clear vision and works towards it till the time you
I think I would like to be known as an entrepreneur that cares. I think it really matters to me that we do the right thing by our customers and our Starling employees. I think that the world is changing, and entrepreneurship is not only about success and money. It's about actually changing things for the better. It really matters to me and really hits me hard when customers feel aggrieved. And I think that's good. And when a customer is happy and we make people successful and we make businesses successful, that's hugely exciting. And I'd like to have the same sort of success in making Starling a great place for people to work. Yeah, this is personal.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why I'm doing it.
Makes sense. And you mentioned your core values of caring for customers, your employees. It takes a massive heart, and it takes, sometimes you have to do things that might be like, you have to play the grown-up in many situations. How difficult is that when you're, especially in decision making, you're trying to have, the best decision as quickly as possible, but sometimes you need to care and you're like, this is holding me back. Does that make you feel like that?
I think decision making is an important skill that you learn. I think that decisions have to be quick. Decisions have to be taken with as much information as you have, but knowing that most of the time there are two good answers. One is 95% right and one is 90% right. The important is you make the decision. And yeah, some of those decisions will have consequences, but those consequences you have to feel. And I think if you stop worrying about what you're doing, if you stop worrying about customers and worrying about the people that you interact with, you've lost your edge.
Interesting. This is the final question, the personal section, but being a woman, do you think it has affected you ever in business, and have you been patronized in any way ever?
Yes, being a woman has made things harder. I sometimes think about like training at altitude.
Wow.
The fact that you're a woman, you're having to work very, very hard all the time. When you get to the top, you're pretty well very, very equipped for the day-to-day role. Yeah, things are harder for women, and they're not getting any easier. There are few women at the top today. It hasn't improved much in the last 30 years.
Wow, I was doing some digging around, some research, and I found that you were once at a CEO convention. And is that something you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I was at a CEO event at the regulator, and I think there was about 150 people and 3 women.
Wow.
And yep, that's what it's like. You're noticed, and you notice for good things and bad things. But I'm encouraging more and more women to put themselves forward, and you have to work hard, but you'll get there.
Do you also think there is a bias, not just in the minds of men, but also there's a bias also from women recruiting women? Is there a bias?
I think that men and women are tough on women, and the hurdle for promotion is higher for women than for men. I think the phrase is, women are either too soft or too hard, never quite right. And until we have more women making appointments at a senior level, it's going to stay like that.
It's very interesting. We will move on to a quickfire sort of section before we go a bit more deeper. So, destiny or luck?
Destiny.
Favorite alcoholic drink?
Champagne.
Favorite holiday destination?
Caribbean.
Okay. Morning or a night person?
Morning.
How many hours of sleep?
6.5.
Is that pretty okay? Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
How many a day?
2.
Ooh, very good. Ooh, very good. Legacy, wealth, or both?
Neither.
From a scale of 1 to 10, where would you place product and marketing?
Product 9, marketing 7.
Ooh, so high up there. Okay. Whilst we're at it, how would you define the other viewers who are trying to be senior like yourselves, men and women, and they would like to call themselves brave hustlers one day? How would you define a brave hustler in your opinion?
Difficult one. I think a brave hustler is somebody who takes on really, really tough challenges, and those challenges are bruising. But you survive, and you learn, and you set yourself up for the following day to do even better.
That was one of the best ones I've heard. Bruising, yes. That's a good one, Anne. Cheers for that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now we're getting into more generic questions, and then we'll go into Starling and tech.
Yeah.
So from a generic point of view, I have a few questions here. A little philosophical, but it is... Money is not biased as an entity. At least that's what I think. But how have we allowed it to become controlled by only a few?
Oh, what a difficult question. I think that the concentration of wealth in fewer and fewer people is quite scary because we thought it was going to go the other way. I don't have an answer for that. That's all I can suggest is that we give at Starling the tools to the individuals so that they control the money rather than the other way around.
The empowerment is huge there. How can women secure their financial freedom?
Get a good job and make it a big part of your life. And that phrase, and those phrases are not necessarily that politically correct. But my father said to me, you're going to work for 40 years.
True.
You better well equip yourself for that career. I was perhaps quite, it was quite rare for a man of his generation to set expectations that I would work for 40 years.
Wow.
And enjoy it for 40 years. I think that we have to expect expectations for women that having good jobs that pay well is what puts you in a position of power in all sorts of ways that give you a better life.
That's a very good answer. How would you define financial freedom? Because that keeps coming up in articles, a buzzword. What is financial freedom to you?
I think as a financial freedom is the fact that you can make your own choices.
Okay.
Financial freedom means that you can decide that this particular job is not the job you want to do, and you can do something different. I think financial freedom is not having to worry about whether you have enough money in retirement. I think financial freedom is all about whether you can pay childcare fees. So financial freedom means an awful lot of things to different people. And most people do not have financial freedom.
Very true. Very true. It kind of leads me into the question of touching slightly on Starling. I know these are generic questions here, but one of your sort of kind of key messages is making money equal. What does that mean?
Make Money Equal is a campaign we started a couple of years ago. And all started from me sitting in the hairdressers and seeing a pile of, men's books and women's books and leafing through them to find out what they're saying about banks and finance. Doing my job, you're obsessed with everything to do with finance and media all the time. And I was looking at all the articles in the women's books, and it was all about scrimping and saving, buying too many shoes. It was all about little money. And I went through the men's books, and it was all about power dressing for, that invest in that wonderful suit, buy the Ferrari, cryptocurrency. Spending money was seen as something that was powerful. And for the women, spending money was something which was trivial. And we did some research on that. We went through 300 journals by a researcher, and they came up with a plan for, basically they listed it. Women are treated in one way by the press, and men in a very, very different way. And this is self-perpetuating. The more you talk to women about money being something to be ashamed of, you shouldn't be spending on yourself. And you talk to men in a different way, the more you reinforce those stereotypes.
It's very interesting. Systematically excluding women, subconsciously many a times. It's very interesting. I always saw the slogan, but I always wanted to find from you what it meant from you, because I had ideas around it.
Yeah.
What's the best time to start a business for anyone at any age?
Starting a business has to be the right time for you. Lots of people start their businesses before they have financial commitments, before they have, they don't have financial freedom, or start their businesses later in their career where they have the financial freedom. Starting a business is risky. Starting a business takes a huge amount of time and energy, and it's not right for everybody. You have to pick your moment. I took a long time to pick my moment.
It's interesting because sort of a lot of people who have that kind of power and have seen, a good career span would start to think about retiring, would start to think about holidays, and you put yourself back in there with a completely new brand. That is incredibly amazing. Very few people do that.
Yeah. I think that, people have asked me, why, when I could have done absolutely anything, I decided to, sort of back to basics with me and a couple of people in a pretty scrappy warehouse, starting a bank. It was hard. It was hard no longer being Anne Boden, important executive at a big bank, but being Anne Boden, asking people for money. Seeking VC funding is very, very difficult. Yeah, it was tough, and it was the best thing I've ever done. A huge learning experience. Learned so much, and really and realizing that lots of things I held to be true and was absolutely certain about, that was absolutely wrong.
Wow.
Fantastic experience. And I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity to go through it.
Wonderful. Do you think, sticking to the topic of sort of people starting businesses and becoming entrepreneurs in a sort of later phase of their life, do you think, because they've got so much experience, this is my personal sort of thought process, they've got so much experience, good or bad, because they could have bad habits, but also, how can we help them and promote them to start more companies?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I think you cannot encourage somebody to do something if they haven't got the deep down will to do it. This was something I desperately wanted to do, and desperately wanted to, take all the ideas I was picking up from around the world and bring them together in Starling. I think you can't talk people into this.
Interesting. You have to feel it and be, okay. So it might be the case that the more people get senior in their life, they kind of feel more satisfied. Maybe you were still dissatisfied in some way. You were still looking and seeking.
But we've got, our lives are long. And, I've got still 40 years to run businesses. and I have every intention of doing it.
Amazing. Amazing. What a way to say it. Okay. How to build successful teams. You have very quickly built a very successful team. What is your secret formula? Without giving out the secret.
Okay, there's no secret formula. Okay. I think that I've always been known for building great teams, and you have to build teams and let them go in some respect to go on to build their careers elsewhere. I think that I hate being micromanaged. I believe in setting the context and letting people make their own way in that context. So lots of context, lots of alignment, and then let people get on with things.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you define setting context? Is it just kind of giving them a parameter of what your expectations are, or what their department should do? Or
I think that I think I share a lot. I think I describe what we do and what we mean a lot, and I think understanding what we're trying to achieve and less about how to do it is how to get the combination right.
Makes sense. When you are putting these teams together, you're letting them run with it, and then they report back to you. There's a huge element of trust and delegation. And how to trust people. It's a very, especially when you don't want to be disappointed, or you might be against the clock. It's like you're trusting people, whether that's product teams or marketing. Or
I think it's back to this 90% right situation. Most solutions are good solutions. You shouldn't spend too much time optimizing something that's almost perfect. Also, things will succeed much better if an individual wants to do it. It's easier for somebody to deliver their own idea than my idea. Things at Starling and things in other organisations I've run are not typical. I'm hopeless at one-on-ones. We tend to work as groups. This place is not you see your manager once a week for a one-on-one conversation. I'm communicating all the time. We're all communicating all the time. We're all talking all the time. I think we're a modern day business.
Interesting. How do you define success, Anne?
I think success is having moved the needle on financial services. 5 years ago, new banks were not known. People weren't starting banks. People weren't starting banks that were successful. We made that happen. That to me is success. I think that success also triggers the big banks to change the way they go about things. So success is not just what we do here. Success is our impact on the whole industry. And now I see lots of the big banks all around the world copying what we are doing. And that's great.
That's incredible.
We've changed the industry. We've made things better for everybody. Banking forgotten about the customer. By doing what we're doing here, we are getting the competition to react, and that's just as important.
Wow. They sound like Elon Musk at Tesla. But I guess same purpose, isn't it? So that's very interesting. When is a good time, and this is more philosophical from a point of view of, this can be seen in many ways. When is a good time to pull the plug? And the reason I ask that is it could be on a small task, it could be experiment, it could be an enterprise.
Yeah.
When is a good time? How do you define that? Or should an entrepreneur really go till the very end and that's the only way to do it?
I think there's a couple of things, going on here. It's pulling the plug on something you've started that didn't work out. It's pulling the plug on, an individual's participation in either your own or some other person's in a program, or it's exit. And if I take, the last verse, I'm very good at saying my job is done at a firm, and I'm going to quit and do something else. I think it's very, very difficult to basically rip up what you created and start again. When it comes to your own business, Starling, I cannot imagine me not being at Starling. But at one day, Starling will be bigger than the original team and the people here, and then it'll be a chance to do something totally new.
Wow, incredible. I've always I was watching some TED Talks, I was looking at some of the other entrepreneurs talking about it, and it's not really a male or a female thing. I think it's now well recognised, using the power of vulnerability. And do you use that? Do you think like that? There's
quite a lot of talk about vulnerability, and especially with some of the books about culture that are currently in the marketplace. I don't knowingly use vulnerability as a technique. I think I'm very honest. I don't think I show probably enough vulnerability, but I love talking. And I think if people ask me a straight question, I'll always give the true answer.
Interesting. And do you want your key commanders-in-chief to do the same?
I think we're all different. I think that this is a double-edged sword. I think the closer people are in teams, and I think you're talking about how people communicate and work together in teams where they know very well. That is a very, very productive environment when the people in that group know each other, they're from a common background, they're close, they communicate well, and they trust each other, and they're very successful. But those environments are also very dangerous. And they're not diverse. And as you probably know, I'm a big advocate for diversity. So we've got to be very, very, very careful in how we implement some of these ideas, because it could give us the wrong result.
This is very interesting. You bring me on to the point of the Starling Bank as a brand. What is Starling Bank's culture?
I think we believe in high performance. I think that we believe that people can be awesome, and people in the right environment doing the right thing can change the world. So I think we are very into people, very into encouraging people to be the best possible version of themselves. But we don't want everybody to be good at everything. The worst possible thing is lots of average people. We have people that are hugely talented in one area and hopeless in another. And that's okay, because together we can produce the magic. I think our culture here is about fairness and caring. I really want people to... I don't want people to be hard. When customers are suffering, I want us to suffer with them. I want us to really hurt when they hurt. But as far as, the wider cultural issues, we believe everybody should have the opportunity, our customers and our employees, to reach their full potential. We're a tech company, We're far more a tech company than a finance organisation. And tech companies are full of people who are a bit geekish. And I think we are geeks with style.
I like that. Geeks with style. I like that. This takes me to the kind of first question around Starling Bank as a brand. And tell me a bit about the story. I know this is a wild story about you raising the first few millions. You wanted to raise a smaller amount and then you raised an enormous amount of money. But I read you something about getting on a boat. Can you tell me the story?
Probably can't go and say more than what's been published.
Okay. Makes sense. So you got on a boat and somebody quite believed in you and gave you 48 million to as the first round. That's an incredible story. Most memorable memory, I know at Starling it's still new, but what's the most memorable memory at the moment?
I think the day we got our banking licence, it was endless. We knew that we were going to have an email sometime in the day, and I spent all day long waiting for this email. So I popped out of the office, and when I was out, I accidentally looked and saw that we had the licence. Wow. So quickly turned around, raced into the office. And so exciting.
Amazing.
You know, we started a bank. We were a fully fledged bank, able to fulfill all our expectations. It was terribly exciting.
Wow, incredible. Let's get into the product a little bit. So, what are some of the key features of Starling Bank as an app?
Well, you know, we have a retail consumer product, a personal current account, and an account for small businesses. For the retail banking proposition, you as an individual can have your own account. You can have a joint account in your partner. You can have an account in a euro currency. You can open an account for your small business. And you can run your limited company accounts all on the same app. And you can make all the payments you need on your smartphone. And we also give you lots of information about your spending, you know, sorted by merchant, you know, sort of your most frequent purchases. All that information is given in a quite aesthetically pleasing way. You have security features. You can lock your card, you can release your card, you can control that spending in all sorts of ways. We will lend money to you. You can have an overdraft, and you can have a slider and say how much you want to borrow. So we put all those tools at your fingertips.
Incredible. I love the goal and the card lock feature.
Oh, good. You know, the wonderful thing is that people can set goals in their life. You know, whether it's a wedding or a holiday in, you know, sort of in the Pacific, or taking their grandmother on a holiday for the first time. So all these various things they can have photographs, and it's very visual, you know. And we love it when people share their images with us, because we can see how Starling is allowing them to save and prosper.
It's a very emotive bank that way, you know. I think it's quite rare. It's quite rare. How do you, at Starling, see yourself over the next 5 years or even 10 years as a growth? Is ambitions for growth across Europe or even US? Or
At the moment, we're growing our small business unit in the UK, and we're building out those features over the next couple of years as we go into supporting bigger and bigger businesses. We're also opening offices across Europe. We'll be going to Ireland first and then across Europe. So there'll be Starling available in lots of countries across Europe very soon.
Fantastic. How do you structure your meetings at Starling? Do you have a routine?
We're a bank, so governance is very important. So we have a number of meetings that address specific issues that we need to thoughtfully consider and document. But what is much more important is when we get together as a team and context share, where we just sit around the table and we say what's going on in our lives and our businesses, so we can all understand how the whole organisation is interfacing. And of course we do stand-ups. 10 o'clock every morning here in Starling. We all gather around outside the monitoring boards and talk about the business.
Wonderful, wonderful. You spoke about the Starling personal and business accounts. As a business model, how big is a banking as a service product offering to you?
Well, we have a number of businesses. We have our B2C business, which is our retail and small business accounts. And then we have banking as a service, which is B2B. This is where we have built the best infrastructure in the world, the best bank accounts in the world, and therefore we're opening up that infrastructure as a SaaS service, as a banking as a service to other organisations. It's very important. It is an attractive revenue stream, and we attract the very best customers, large corporations, governments, because they know the service is reliable, because we use it ourselves.
That's very interesting. You're not just a shell, you've built it from scratch, and it's incredible. Future of banking in 2030.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, well, I have lots of opinions on how it could go.
Okay.
I think that banking has always been something which is something people do explicitly. So, it started off by going into a branch and handing over the money. Then it was the contact centre, your phone up, and then it was the web, and then it was the app. What if it disappeared? What if we had invisible banking? What if banking became something totally in the background? What if every time you had to pay for something, you paid as you went? So we now have a situation where you can go into a store, pick things off the shelves and walk out the door.
Ooh, that'd be
right.
very interesting.
What about if as you're driving along, you're paying for your insurance by the second? What if you pay for your electricity for your car as you drive along the road, as you use it? What if payments, the way they are at the moment, just disappear?
Very cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could have a world where, as you go about your life, you're constantly charged for things, and you feel on your electronically enabled clothing whether you had enough money or not. Now, this is very, very possible.
Sci-fi. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That is interesting. And what is interesting about your answer is how intertwined energy, engineering is with banking, health and well-being.
Yeah.
It's not an isolation, or finance doesn't live in a silo. Very interesting. Very interesting. The final question around Starling Bank as a core was around recruitment and the people here.
Yeah.
How do you go about recruiting some of the best people in the world?
We have the best people in the world here, and the best people want to work with the best people. So I think that we are a magnet for people that are talented. I'm terribly proud of what we do. I'm terribly proud of the people who work here. And that is what makes the difference. People nowadays want to work in an organisation that is doing something meaningful, right? Doing something that's going to make a difference. And we're going to make a difference. And we're meaningful. And it's exciting. And it's technically challenging. And we're going to change the world. And that's great.
What else do you want?
Okay, so I'm having the time of my life.
That's great.
This is a huge challenge, and we're really good at it. And I want lots of people who are like-minded to spend their time with us doing things that really matter. Because money is very important. The most important thing is your health and your family's health, and then your financial health. And that's what we're doing here. It matters.
Wow, very powerful, Anne. That takes me into the question of how you're making it all happen from a technology point of view. You said earlier you're more of a tech company than a finance company. You do a lot of product launches and you do them very quickly. What is in comparison to some of the other tech banks out there, how do you run your IT and get stuff done so quickly?
I think we're all technologists at heart. I'm a computer scientist. A lot of the leaders here are technologists and have a lot of experience in technology. It really helps if we start with the very best technology as components. All the big banks are working with technology that, is 20, 30, 40 years old. We have the very latest, newest technology here, and it is easier to work with it. But the important thing is that we work as teams. And we do not have a process whereby somebody thinks of the idea, talks to somebody else, who talks to somebody else, who talks to somebody who knows an engineer that codes it. We have all of that going on, sort of with one or two people. We work as teams. We work very, very quickly. And we put things live continuously. We have a continuous deployment methodology where we deliver code and we push it into production within hours of it being written after running hundreds of thousands of tests. That's the very modern way of building, delivering software.
That's incredible. A lot of other banks are just so slow.
And it's not because it's not full of great people. The banks employ great people doing a great job, but it's a different problem. It's really tough. We have a nice, clean environment, great people, and a culture of moving very fast.
That's incredible. How does technology make banking better, if it does?
Yeah, technology is very important to banking. If you think of what we do, we don't manufacture cars, even Tesla ones. We don't generate electricity. We don't produce films. Okay, what we do is manage money. So what we're doing is basically moving representations, digital representations of money around. And what really matters about that is security and speed and scalability. And that's all about technology. So technology and banking and finance go together so well. We're now in the world of fintech. Fintech is very fashionable.
True.
But fintech is finance and technology. And I was been doing this for 40 years, and it wasn't so sexy in 1981.
That is true. That is true. You're also in the business of making sure that your customers' money is safe.
Yeah.
And that is a huge thing. Do you think you already have great processes in place, but do you think in the future things like blockchain could add value?
I think blockchain has huge potential. I think that blockchain, to what we do at the moment, doesn't give us any advantages. However, I should imagine that blockchain will be used in very complex trade transactions, and we would probably be using blockchain in the future in some of those specific functional areas.
Okay. What are your thoughts on AI and machine learning?
AI and machine learning, very exciting. I think we're now at the tipping point where machine learning is going to come into its own. I actually did a course at university in the late 70s on AI. Yeah,
No.
it was. Yep. And it's been around for a long time, but we haven't actually used it in anger. I think now we have some very, very useful applications. We have a number of data scientists here and specialists in machine learning. And we have huge data sets from where we can learn, and we are using that in our fraud areas and in customer insight. So very powerful. I think, sort of, it's not just driverless cars that are going to be taking advantage of this technology. It's going to be very important in finance.
Give me, if there is, a way to explain a real-life situation. You spoke about fraud, you mentioned about customer insight.
Yeah, okay. Sort of machine learning is all about taking huge masses of data and using that data and testing certain algorithms against that data to see if certain things are true. And so one practical example would be when I go to Gatwick, I'm probably going to holiday. If I'm going to Heathrow, I'm probably going on a business trip. So what I need if I'm going on a holiday in terms of financial products is different to what I need when I'm not going on holiday. We can work on giving insight to customers to say, okay, you need to buy your travel policy, or you need to start booking a hotel for a conference. So we can actually deduce from people's actions and data the various next action that is likely to be help them with their financial life.
Interesting. And these are stats, and I was looking at some fund manager books, and the stats show that women are better with money, but still only a few invest.
Yeah.
And I know you have a marketplace, and there are some products there. How do you think technology can change that attitude?
Women like to have lots and lots of proof points before they take the plunge. They're better investors. They don't get easily distracted into the new glamorous products. So with new technology, with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, those insights can be given to both men and women to help them make better financial decisions.
You talk about machine learning, it might not be something that we use, but I'm always fascinated. There was a report that recently came out that a lot of European startups, rather, I think FT did, 2 in 5 actually, don't really use real machine learning. They're using more sort of a kind of and an or loops, or they're not really allowing systems to learn. Maybe it's lack of processing power, whatever it is. But how do you think, is machine learning just a buzzword, or actually it's more difficult than it?
No. I think machine learning is at a tipping point. We now have the compute power. We now have a huge number of algorithms and techniques and tools being freely available from the big tech companies. So the tools are there. Mm-hmm. The compute power is there. If you have the data, you can get the insight. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the companies that have been playing with it didn't have one of those features.
Mm. Interesting. Do you think as a society we lack financial education both in families and schools generally?
It's quite difficult to address the question of how do you teach people about money at school. You imagine having a class about money, and in that class you have people who are wealthy, people who are sort of just scraping by, and people who have nothing. How on earth do you educate people about money? It is hugely personal. It is hugely painful. And I don't think I have a good answer for this. I think the trite answer is teach financial education in schools. I actually ran the school bank once.
Oh, right.
I went to the local comprehensive school. When I was there at 11 years of age, I had the job of collecting up the 10 pences and whatever, and recording the amounts, whatever. It's money's tough. I think we shouldn't be as glib as just saying, let's give people financial education in school. Money does things to people's heads.
True.
Whether you have lots of money or no money at all,
Correct.
there's a lot of things going on up there with money. We need to do better, and we're on a path, but I think it's far from solved.
Interesting. As a closing statement, was there something you wanted to mention to other entrepreneurs, women in particular, who are trying to look into starting their own business?
I think starting your own business is incredibly tough. And people will tell you it's impossible. The number of people who said to me, nobody starts banks, and you are going to find it incredibly difficult to start a bank. That drove me on. That gave me the energy to prove it could be done, and it could be done for the right reasons, with the right vision. But every entrepreneur or would-be entrepreneur must know it's difficult, but know that it's incredibly rewarding. But you have to look after yourself. You have to make sure that you share it. You share the good days and the bad days, and you celebrate success. Because you have to be kind to yourself, otherwise you don't stand the journey.